Hey, Griffin, new friends, welcome to another Overtime show here in Los Angeles, Hollywood, California, talking about cinema and the integration of Web3 into cinema and vice versa. Like, that's the thing, is, which comes before the other. And I think, there's a film symposium as well as emails coming in constantly about how that process is and how to make my money. I spent a lot of time in Twitter Spaces. Follow me at MintyFresh5 on Twitter to see the projects that I'm into, and the overwhelming vibe of these spaces tend to be about in Web3, like how to grow a certain project or just to hang out and chill and get vibes. And then there was a person who entered who. It was funny because this talk was a purely Web3 talk, about an NFT, and then a film person came in because they wanted to pitch themselves to somebody who came into the room who happened to be a producer, and they targeted them, and then they got up on stage, in the guise of, I want to ask a question. Okay, well, great, fantastic. This is what it's about. This is what I like about Web3 and sort of the new tools of Web3 are on Twitter, are the Discord channels and our Twitter Spaces, because in Web3 you have a voice, you can be heard. And so in this concept of okay, great, come on stage and talk about your question. And he then proceeded to just pitch himself in a way that was very, very aggressive and just kind of continually did it, literally battering the poor guest. And so it was very telling as to it's normal in Hollywood. If a celebrity were to take a stage and do a speaking engagement, they would just get harassed. Sometimes people like to do it while they're on stage, and then everyone boos them. But it's just there is no shame in because in sort of that Hollywood way, you think that if I just have the chutzpah, the balls to really just tell them the thing that they need to do with me, I'm going to be famous. I'm going to be the next one. I'm going to be the next Tarantino. And welcome to Web3 Media Friends. Yes, indeed, I am auditioning for Guilfoyle in Silicon Valley. This is my audition tape, but welcome for those who want to talk about cinema and Web3. And so this person comes into the Twitter Spaces and pitches this is the movie that you need to do with me. And it was just it really just brought to the forefront why movies and Web3 don't quite have the synthesis that people believe they have, that filmmakers want it to have. We have Caladita, and we have a great film by Miguel Faust that's that is going to be funded by an NFT, and it's exciting, but to some degree it's also a bit a misnomer, because that was during a bull market, and so that's not repeatable in this bear market. And I don't think it will be repeatable in the next bull, because I think we're going to have moved on in terms of, what it means to incorporate cinema and Web3. That's the idea, is everyone who comes into this space from traditional media thinks, this is how I'm going to be the person, and I'm going to be, the auteur. And they start calling themselves the OG, I'm the first in this space. I did this first, and so I'm the best because I did it first. And they keep kind of dwindling down, I'm the first on this blockchain, and I did all of these things before anybody else on the layer 2. It's just he said, yes, you probably are the first project ever on that. And so I wanted to talk to one of our digital correspondents, Gaston. Gaston, are you there? Hello, bonjour. I am here again at the train station. Voila, this is my life. This is the life of an artist. You live quite poor without the royalties, but what do I need with the royalties? Well, you do need to live, but you're a filmmaker as well, right? Oh, oui. I've done 7 feature films. You've done 7 feature films, and you're homeless. Oui, this is the life of the filmmaker, and this is how I like to live. I like to live here at the train station, and sometimes they have my movies over here. Is this one under this billboard here? When the train moves, is one of my movies, and it is a great promotion for me. But you're homeless still. That's kind of tragic. I think that that's why a lot of filmmakers come into Web3 thinking that, beyond the work, that they're somehow going to get exalted because of the popularity of the space, again, at that time. And so that's why Caladita worked at the time to raise enough money from an NFT sale in order to fund their thing. And so that's the weird misnomers is culturally, filmmakers, we come from a very, very competitive, nature, right, Gaston? Well, I will cut your throat to get into Sundance. Do you know somebody I can get into Sundance? Because I will cut your throat to get to them. This is the point. So it's just like how competitive we are, whether it's film school, whether it's, getting into marketplaces, getting into film festivals, getting the distributor, getting the distribution deal, then getting, the studio deal. It's very, very competitive in a lot of unfair ways. And so I think that really becomes a real challenge for us as filmmakers, as creators from Web 2 to come into Web 3 and then say, oh yeah, maybe I don't have the best story. Maybe my voice isn't the most important one in the room, and that's probably the case. I think most people are bored of listening to somebody ramble. It's like being in a Twitter space. I'm bored listening to somebody ramble on for 90 minutes. Well, this is what I do on a great occasion. I like to, when I plug my phone in, back here, there's a charger free, and I plug in my phone. Once I get the phone and I get the signal of a 3G, I go on the Twitter space and I talk for 90, maybe 2 hours uninterrupted. This is the point. It's very, very boring when somebody does that, and I think that's kind of becoming the case with cinema. It's formulaic, and when you're staring at one unfettered voice, if they're not great, if they are not a great filmmaker, if they're just stumbling through, it's like watching somebody stumble through a long 2-hour speech, and it's painful. And so that's kind of the idea that, cinema is not quite suitable for those in Web3 because, at the moment, because the mentality of Web2 is like, oh yeah, you're going to want to listen to me for 2 hours uninterrupted. And when that person interrupted that space, you're like, no, nobody wants to hear about your long pitch and your just how awesome you think you are and how many studio deals you think you have and how many important people you think you know. Nobody wanted to hear that. We were there to vibe about, an idea. And so when you have that mentality of like, oh, it's going to be me, the important part of the discussion for that long, I think that is the clear point that, you have to have many voices in I think what is going to be Web3 in media. And I'm not saying like, oh, by committee, you can't do a movie by committee. Well, that's the thing. Again, I don't want to hear that person ramble on for 90 minutes who has that very limited worldview, because what you've said there is, 90 seconds worth of stuff. I don't need your 90 minutes of rambling on. And so I think that's just kind of a prime example of, what I'm seeing out here in Hollywood. And I'm working hard to develop, follow me at Minty Fresh Vibe on Twitter, as I work hard to try and, work with platforms like Rug Radio. Hi, our executive producers here at Rug Radio. To define whether it's through DAOs. We're going to talk today about a new DAO called Story DAO, which is lighting up Hollywood with its ideas of decentralization. And we're going to talk about their take, because I think their take is probably the best take yet in terms of decentralization of story in Hollywood. But first, let's take a look at. Thank you, Gaston, so much. Didn't mean to cut you off. I'm very, very sorry. You cut me off all the time, but I will still cut you like what is you call it, like a beach. If you do not connect me with your friend at Sundance. I know, very, very competitive here in Hollywood. Thank you, Gaston. But let's check out this crazy house in North Hollywood. There you go. It's not quite Hollywood. It's up in the valley. But it's called the Crypto House. And a buddy of mine, he was telling me a story that he moved into a house, and sort of, kind of became the guy in the neighborhood that was the crypto guy. Like, oh yeah, that crypto guy bought a house in off fancy neighborhood. And it was kind of hilarious to see somebody take it to another level in terms of decoration, because they got, look at this, they got the Bored Ape wallpaper. Looks like they got quite a few apes, so they're doing really well. And this is the funny part, is like that. This is wallpaper. This house comes with this. So you get some Bored Ape wallpaper. You get some CryptoPunks. I mean, is that? I don't know. Tell me if you guys recognize who this is, because look at that beard. That might be somebody we know here on the show. Very, very interesting. These are very well-known punks. And so, some, is that like some tweets? And then the Doge Pound room, the Doge Pound bedroom. Who doesn't want to relax there? And I like this, the Bitcoin Ultra Lounge here, with just a bed and some circular couches. Very, very interesting stuff. I think when you're in this space, sometimes it's you got money to spend when you're doing well, and so that's one of those. They bought it like $780 and they're selling for 1.2. They're trying to get their money out of there. Let's talk about StoryDAO, the quest to recreate Hollywood by Justin and JP Alanis. They went to film school, and they got a little bit of the studio business and how tough it is, and seeing sort of the gatekeeping involved, and the things that we talk about here on the show that don't quite work for creators because they're very limiting, very bottlenecking. And sometimes the best idea just doesn't have the advantage. It's just like who and a lot of favoritism in very, very weird ways. And so and enter StoryDAO. And so their ideas, there's a lot of middlemen within this $100 billion industry. And so it's interesting that they want to try and eliminate the middlemen. But their first step in the DAO making is to select 300 Hollywood type players from the traditional William Morris UTA. So it's just like, we're going to recreate Hollywood, but we're going to have 300 people who are traditional Hollywood. Let's read on. So I got really guilfoyle there, didn't I? I apologize. And so I told you this was actually an audition for guilfoyle, the Asian years on Silicon Valley. They're launching, and if you don't know, I'm Asian. So they're launching this first IP universe in November, and JP predicts it 10 years. The next Star Wars, the next Pokemon will be community owned, and I have that belief too. I think that there will be a big franchise that comes out of Web3, because there's a lot of creativity in Web3 right now, and how does that translate into broader media? Well, this is the thing, is like they're saying like, oh well, we got the idea for success, we're just gonna get all the gatekeepers back. It's like, again, as I'm explaining it, the absurdity becomes very clear. But I do like DAO. I like the idea of DAO structure. I think DAO structure as a whole can be a bit cumbersome, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm involved with several DAOs, and there's votes. There's a big, large community. You have to have, quorum. You have to have enough people there to vote. You have to have them educated enough to vote. And so that is a whole process, and that takes a lot of time. So if you're doing something with a DAO, that's not happening very fast, is it? So, and that's just something, again, to be cognizant of. And so if you're like, oh, DAOs, like, yeah, great. But maybe DAOs can be a bit targeted. And I think that that's what they're trying to do potentially here. So you have the 300 member community trust, and then so StoryDAO is a centralized business with ambitions to eventually decentralize through a token, and so each universe within StoryDAO operates as a DAO. And so that's an idea that we talked about over a year ago, and the first NFT NYC. We had our guest on, and we talked about that idea of like having your centralized IP. And then you can create, opportunities for those who wanted to participate in it. But that central IP has to be, as Yuga's doing, has to be Bored Apes, has to be that really strong alpha sort of growth that, goes into mainstream media so that everybody knows, oh, yeah, Bored Ape, I recognize that. And that's why you have the ability of a Jenkins to do Azurbala. And let's talk about Azurbala later. Great project at its core. And so the idea of, then splintering off and creating, your own IP by participation with the NFT is what we, hypothesized. And so, a year later you can do that still with NFTs, but, potentially also with you then after you split off that NFT, creating a DAO around that NFT. And so I think there's a lot of talk of, doing that per genre, per project, per, whatever. And I do think that if you can make it as small as possible, there is a better chance for success, because again, if you make it about like maybe it is project based, and it's very, very standalone, like you would form a company around just the creation of a single piece, like a single movie. And so in that, you create its own structure outside of the studio system. So when you're watching those credits, there's a lot of like production companies, etc. And so, but at the core, at the base of it, is a single operating, single entity that operates as the movie. And so it produces the movie, just this one little business entity, to protect, the studio and all the others involved. And so in that same mindset, I think that that's how DAOs could be applied aptly, because smaller governance structure, etc. And hopefully if you get enough motivated people, but again, maybe you're gatekeeping by selecting the motivated people that you think get it done. But, that's just how it's going to go right now. And I think a lot of DAOs have to have, that core group of advisors, because they need to educate their voters. And it's a real challenge, and it does slow things down considerably. So critics just say, aren't these new versions of Hollywood Suits the new gatekeepers? Has anything changed? That's our plan of progressive decentralization. The goal is to be a completely open platform where anyone can come on and create the basis for a new narrative universe. We want to create the platform for them to do it, and that's the right way to create a platform to start. We have to build the platform with a centralized team, and we have to think about how to maintain quality to those productions. So again, every time you take one step forward, it's like, okay, then we're going to bring on the Hollywood people to govern it. Okay, then we're going to go out and create something. Well, we want quality, so we're going to have to really keep it centralized. And so there's a lot of backtracking in these pursuits, because again, they're trying to fit this mold of distribution of a cinema, of a Netflix deal to a television show. And so that's where I think the misnomer is trying to, cram these into this space. Whereas I think those who are embracing this space currently, those who know what 10K-TF is right now, those who understand storytelling with the machinations of Web3 in a very, very native way, like Sound, like, and I think, Oniforce is gonna do this as well. And so, asterisk, I'm very biased, because if you're fans of the show, I help out with those projects. And so the ideas behind storytelling within, these different paradigms are as powerful, and much like how as powerful and time consuming being on a 3-hour Twitter Spaces, if you've ever done one of those, they're enthralling. Like, it's just like, could I sit in a 3 hours in a movie theater? The director had better be very, very good. And we're talking about somebody who has really raised the level of craftsmanship to be so engaging, because it's not going to happen with, a standard, second or third feature from, some indie filmmaker who's just too good looking to really have anything important to say. It's a very specific format that a lot of people, because of television, because of YouTube, think that they can just run into and deliver. Oh yeah, I'm just gonna make that longer. This rant I'm doing, I'm just gonna make that. If I did this for 90 minutes, thank you for being with me for the time that you do. And I think that I've done long shows before, but usually I bring on a guest, or I have something very cogent to say, based upon something we may all be interested in, whether that's blockchain or pumping our bags for the purpose of understanding this art form a little better. Thank you for that. But if I did this for 90 minutes at a time, every time, you guys would walk out. You guys probably are already, and that's fine, because you can. But that leaves sort of me thinking oh yeah, I'm killing it. I did 90 minutes of that. And so that's where it doesn't quite meet. There's a lot of really not great filmmakers who are looking at television, looking at other successes, looking at performances. That's the thing. It falls onto the actor who may have carried that for 90 minutes, or the actors, or the ensemble that has carried that for 90 minutes, and then the filmmaker thinking, oh yeah, I can just do that. That was simple, and I can just cover it in this way and shoot it in this way. That's very rote, and that's the thing is sitting through a 3-hour movie is daunting, and it better be done by a master. But a 3-hour Twitter space can be very, very engaging because it allows for multiple voices. And I think that that's where Web3 could be heading in this incorporation of the voices. Again, it's not going to be in the format of like, oh, now you're going to give the decision to everybody to make a, to make a movie. That movie is going to be vanilla. That, it's going to be horrible. It's going to be Vanilla Ice horrible. And so you have this homogenization that's, it's not going to be as good as what I would do because I'm an auteur and I'm good because that's what I learned in film school. So we'll cover a whole nother episode as to, the gentrification of film school and its limitations on thought processes, because then you're really thinking very linearly about entertainment and about, you may be well educated in certain things but that's how you believe success will be. Success lies within Sundance, studio deal. These things, these steps that you need to hit, or your parents are going to be horribly disappointed, much like mine are. Like, subscribe, hit the bell notification. I'll see you in the next.